All right. I got 6:31. Call to order the special meeting of the East Lyme Board of Finance. First order of agenda, pledge allegiance. Please all rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Next item on tonight's agenda is delegations. Anyone that would like to come forward and speak about anything that's currently on tonight's agenda, now would be the time for you to come forward and speak your mind. Delegations, anybody that would like to speak under delegations? Please state your name and address.
Jamie Barr Shelburne, 31 McElhaney Drive in Niantic. I'm going to read because it's easier. I'm here tonight to ask you for your support for the Board of Education budget and most especially for the new initiatives that help support our students and their families. The Board of Education is asking for 2.7 social workers and 0.5 psychologists for our students. My takeaway from the last few meetings with you is that of skepticism and need and your wants for spending on security upgrades. I understand the want and need to spend money on security, but security will only get us so far. It would be far better for us all to be able to help students and families ID those first with mental health problems and to get them the help that they need before it gets to the point of being concerned with major security issues. More and more in our world today, we are reading about shootings at schools, businesses, bombings, stabbings. I could go on, but the point here is that the majority of these cases are all due to mental health issues. We are having a mental health crisis in our country, but we have pushed it to the back burner and kept it as a taboo topic for too long. But we need to stop because it's not helping anyone. More and more students today are dealing with things that we didn't have when we were in schools. They're not only lashing out, but are keeping things in, and this leads to more suicides, cuttings, eating disorders, etc. We need to help our kids today before any tragedies happen. Yes, we have guidance counselors in our schools, but their jobs have changed significantly since our time in school. There is currently a part-time drug and alcohol counselor at the high school who is always busy with students, and the Youth Coalition has fundraised to be able to supplement and support this in the summer. The neediest students can continue with her, and the Brian Daigle Foundation is helping out this year by giving her space in their offices so that the students can keep their anonymity. But not all mental health issues are drug and alcohol related. Our state has cut and cut and cut education services and mental health services until we have reached the point that it is now falling on the local towns to pick up these services. Do I agree with this? No, but here I am nonetheless and pleading with you all to help all of our families and the future of our town and our country by not cutting from the education budget and to allow us to continue to allow our children to receive the best education we can give them, and that includes making sure they are mentally healthy. Our school district's mission statement reads that the East Lyme Public Schools will inspire, engage, and educate each student to become a contributing citizen and a responsible, independent, and critical thinker. That is what the board is trying to continue to do with the budget that we have given you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Under delegations.
Hello, Lori Singer, 31 South Ridge Road in Niantic. I'm here as both a parent and a teacher at the high school.
What address?
31 South Ridge Road. I wanted to talk to you for a minute about the budget and how it impacts science education at the high school. The state last year approved new science standards. Those standards changed drastically how we teach and what we teach. It's requiring now us to be very student-directed instead of teachers lecturing at kids. We're supposed to be having students doing experiments, learning things, figuring things out for themselves, essentially being scientists. From K through 12, this is going to be a major shift in terms of what we teach and how we teach. To do that, we need resources, we need training, and we need lab supplies so kids can actually do experiments. The budget as proposed already is a bare bones budget. My department at the high school sat down and did an absolute minimum we needed to survive. Not to progress, not to make great leaps forward, to survive. I'm begging you, please don't cut this budget. If you do, it will be devastating for science education across the district. Kids have a lot of options these days, other schools to go to that sound like they're fantastic science schools. Right now, we compete. If we don't have resources, we can't compete. I'm guessing if you talk to teachers across the district, every level, every discipline, they would say the same thing. They're doing the best they can out of their own pockets, out of their own time to try to make this work for kids. We don't want to fall backwards, and that's what's going to happen if we don't get the money we need to start moving forward and making progress. We've been holding on for a long time now, but we can't afford this cut. Please accept the budget as proposed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Delegations.
My name is Robin Levine. I live at 130 Boston Post Road. I wish I would have come up first because I'm not going to be as eloquent as either of the other speakers, so apologies for that. I've been living in town for over 20 years, and I also work for the Board of Education as a paraprofessional, first as an instructional aide, then a teacher's aide, and now as a job coach for the 18 to 21-year-old transition program. To put it simply, this town will not be great anymore educationally if the budget continues to get cut. Staffing excellence will lower and programming will not be up to par. Lowering our standards and maintaining these high expectations is not sustainable. And within a short period of time, I believe that more and more excellent staff will leave and our blue ribbon schools will become average. This will have awful long-term ramifications, and we could easily just become another expensive shore town. Teachers in towns just 15 minutes away are dealing with issues we hope we will never deal with because of low standards and damaged budgets. Our schools and the excellent education they provide make us stand out in the state. We must keep it that way. This is especially true for special education. As the other lady said, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, the mental health budget has been decimated in the state and the country, and we must make sure that our students in special education, their caretakers, their paraprofessionals, their teachers, and their families are taken care of. I've worked in the middle school, high school, and post-high school transition, and these programs are crucial now more than ever with the reduced funding in the mental health fields. The crisis is real. I happen to have a very good friend whose niece was killed in Parkland. This is striking people we know every day. There will be a ripple effect if the budget gets cut. Taking a village and helping raise people up is our job, and we must all take care of each other. We need our budget to remain intact to continue to provide our students with the excellent education, programs, and services that they deserve. I mean, I, for one, I don't know if it's true for anyone else, I moved to this town for the schools from New York City. Let's please continue to serve all our students the very best way we can and to keep our town a place to move to and to stay in. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Delegations, anybody else that would like to speak about agenda items tonight?
Hello, my name is Victoria Thompson. I reside at 51 Plansdam Road in East Lyme. I don't have anything prepared because I wasn't really planning on speaking, but I am here as both a parent and a teacher at the high school. I have a child that will be going into kindergarten in 2 years. And right now, looking at the classroom sizes of 25 5-year-olds in a room seriously makes me consider some of the nearby magnet schools. I am approaching this from a perspective that I want him to be able to grow and learn in the best environment possible. As a science educator, having graduated from Cornell University, I find that East Lyme High School has an incredible program. Right now, we are competitive. We want to be able to make sure that our students are getting access to the best resources, to the best technology, and are fully prepared for that. They will not be if there's a cut to the education budget. It is critical that they have access to those resources, technology, and excellent staff. So if I want to feel confident in being able to prepare my students, I need to be able to have access to those resources. I think that I agree and support Robin and all of the other mental health issues that we also need to be addressing. We need to be really proactive. Our students do have a lot of academic pressure, which can be healthy, but we need to teach them how to balance those things in life. So I am here asking you to please support the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Delegations, anybody else who would like to speak under delegations? Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, we'll close delegations. And we'll move on to old business. Old business, outstanding information that the board's requested to help us with our deliberations.
You have things in your folder, I believe, the salary scale. Remember that? Oh, great. And the contract comparison, so that's a great thing. And there's one thing on Appendix A in the back. I found this as a non-union employees. So it'll take you a lot to get through. Of course, we have a meeting on Wednesday night, and we can dive deep into this if you like. The highlight on that Appendix A is in bold and it's underlined that the Board of Selectmen recognizes that hourly pay and benefits of non-union employees shall be at least comparable or exceed those of union hourly employees. That's where the language "best of the best" comes from. And that's an important part of some of the discussion we've had in earlier times about where we get some of that stuff. And we can dive deep into it if you'd like to now or on Wednesday, since it seems to be ongoing issues and discussions about contracts, et cetera.
And to amend this Appendix A, that's owned by the Board of Selectmen, and the,
Board of Selectmen.
just all these policies are owned by.
That's our policy, and there's other policies in that. But it's most, and I got piles of stuff we weren't gonna send you, but most of the detail and the benefits and the compensation is in your folder.
This one.
This is critical when you want to compare what the non-union and the unions are getting, and the whole obligation Board of Selectmen feels is it needs to be comparable. It is comparable in a lot of ways, and it will differ in some ways as well. We're talking about public safety people versus town hall and clerical versus public works, and then of course career department heads.
Okay. Does anybody at the board have enough time to dive into this, to ask any questions?
No time.
I don't think we have
Take a
time now
moment,
to
yeah.
get into this and read it. I'd like to compare and contrast. I will ask, as far as the employee scales is concerned, do we know that all our employees fall within the current range?
Yes, the one who doesn't is Dave Putnam. He took on another position. He's not just a Parks and Rec, as you know, he's also the Youth Services Director, Director of Youth Services. And when Mr. Formica made him Youth Services, there was a special stipend or an extra bump given for taking over that. We had a director who was, I don't know what kind of money she was making, but we eliminated a whole director and brought it into Dave Putnam. So I think it varies by $7,000 or $10,000. I'll get you the exact figure, actually.
And is there another category that the extra 7,000 should go into under this list here, or is that just a separate stipend?
He makes X, and I think that, what does this pay scale go to on Parks and Rec?
100.
I had 105. So I think it was a $10,000 stipend when he took over Youth Services, 10 or 15,000. So he's 5 over, but he's not just a Parks and Rec director like every other town. He's director of 2 different departments.
So you're saying he's at 105, 95 is base pay, and 10 is stipend?
Yes,
rough order of magnitude.
take that.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? We'll review this, we'll get back to this Wednesday. I think we'll leave this here. All right. Hearing none, we'll close old business. We'll move on to new business. Is Historic Properties here? Or are you going to speak on Historic
They are.
Properties?
Okay. Barbara Lowe Johnson is here, and by your request, she came up, and we had, Barbara, why don't we have you come over to the podium? And she's the new chair of our Historic Properties. As you know, we lost Luanne Lang earlier this year, suddenly, who did so much about town. And Barbara stepped into some big shoes to fill. But also, you know, when you're taking over a new project without the transition of passing it down, there was bumps in the road, but Barbara, by gosh, rolled up her sleeves, and we're thankful to have her. This is a very simple budget, as you know, $2,500 is in that budget.
$25,000, that
I
was.
know. Well, we just took it from the Board of Ed. $2,500 that's the Samuel Smith House that we've, Board of Selectmen, and I think this group too has agreed that we will continue to support it like we do the Thomas Lee House as agreed upon earlier. And they have their own fundraising that they do as well to substantially make improvements to that home in the future. Barbara, is there anything else that we should introduce the commission to?
Well, I wanted to introduce the commission to another individual, and
Great.
that is Ben Bullock, my goodness, who is the chair of the Friends of, why don't you tell it, because I always get it wrong. Come on up, because that way you can answer questions too. Because he is representing the Samuel Smith House and is directly involved in any of the repairs that are being made, I asked him to join me so that I can address things with regard to historic properties in general, and he can answer specific questions.
So my name is Ben Bullock. Been in town for 42 years or more. And I'm the president of the Friends of Samuel Smith House and Property Incorporated. We're an incorporated board, strictly volunteer. We have 12 members. And as Mark said, we do our best at raising funds to supplement the stipend we get from the town to maintain the 1685 homestead. And we're in our 5th year now, and we're going to have a great year coming down the road. But between pro bono labor and the fundraisers, which we're really starting to get a handle on now, we'll maintain the house for many, many years for the enjoyment of the town. And also, one of our plans down the road is the education of the children. So programs of that, and what a farm was and how it was run in 1685. So.
1685.
Thank you.
Questions?
Questions?
Thank you.
Any questions from the board?
I have one.
Okay.
On the Samuel Smith House, it seems to be in disrepair. What's the plans for getting up to snuff?
That's a long answer.
How do you define disrepair?
It's an old
We just had some
house.
archaeological surveys done that were funded by the state. Still trying to totally date the house, but it's still in the late early 1700s. There were a family living in there, give or take 20 years ago. So it's not fallen down. We're in the process now of re-siding the outside of the home and making it more accessible to people. It's safe to go in now. But we've got our 5-year plan of deciding, then we've got to tackle the roof. But again, everything is structurally sound, and it's not going to fall down or fall apart.
Well, I know. I just want to know what kind of plan you had because I go by it almost every day.
Oh, okay. Please stop by.
Yeah,
Please stop by.
I did one Sunday. I did.
Okay.
All right. There you go.
We're We're open every Sunday from Memorial to Labor Day. So.
Any other questions from the board?
Yes. Hi, Ben.
Hi.
Hi, Barbara. So, what's your goal for the property? I mean, are you working towards restoring it or getting it into a fully pristine condition, or I don't know, whatever? What is your goal for the property?
The house itself is to get it. I don't know if pristine is the right word or not, but to continue the renovation so it gets back as close as we can get it and find when it was built around the 1700s.
Okay.
As learning experience for, again, the town and the children. Sadly, from what I understand, and history in the schools is not taught like it was years ago. Some kids don't even know what the Revolutionary War was about. And, you know, the house was around during that period of time. So it's to restore the house so they can see how people used to live.
Mm-hmm.
It's to eventually have an apple orchard of the heritage apples. We have community gardens there now that people can rent the plots, hiking trails, a quote-unquote working farm of that period,
Okay.
so people can understand how we came, where we're from.
Now, in your 5-year plan, did you estimate the funding that was required to get you to that place?
Not specifically dollar for dollar, because, I mean.
Or roughly speaking, order of magnitude. I mean, I'm not trying to get too picky
No.
here.
The grant that the town got from the state of Connecticut states that the town has to financially maintain
The
helping
property.
preserve the property, and the house really it states, not the property.
All right, the money that you get from the town, will it maintain the property?
With what we raise, it will.
Barbara, you're shaking your head no.
Well, not as fast as we'd like to see it.
Is the property in any danger of disrepair with insufficient funding? With the funding that you're getting from the town, is it sufficient to keep the property in a safe condition? I don't know what the right word is here, but I think you know what I'm driving at.
To be perfectly honest, yes, it is.
Sorry?
Yes,
Yep.
I mean, we can live, we sure would like to have more, because we'd like to do the roof
Yeah.
sooner than later.
Yeah,
but-
what I'm trying to get at, I'm not trying to belabor this, what I'm trying to get at is, are we giving you enough money to do what you gotta do, or what I don't wanna have happen is this funding to be insufficient and then find out, oh, you know what, it really wasn't enough, and now the property's not safe to go into. I wanna make sure that the money we're contributing to that is not wasted.
If I could interject just
Of course.
briefly, I think, and the way, at least my personal perspective on this, is that this is like any house, you know, and almost all of us are probably homeowners, and we know that if we you know, do a Band-Aid job on the roof, then the roof is going to need work later on.
Right.
You know, if we tear the whole roof down, you know, and put up a whole new roof, for instance, then that's a much greater expenditure, but we can expect that then to be in good repair for the next 15 or 20 years. You know, so it's difficult to answer your question because it depends on the context. In the context of are the Band-Aids going to be sufficient so that we won't have, you know, disasters? Yes. You know,
Because
we
when we-
understand that there isn't, that in these times, we're not asking for all kinds of money because there are other priorities.
Right,
You know.
because when we first bought the house, actually, I went in the house in the beginning with Luann and toured it. It's a great property, so I'm all for it. But when it came to the town, one of the promises that were made, I'm sure you're aware of, is that this was going to be fundraising and we were not going to require anything from the town to support it. So now we're supporting it with some money, which, okay, I could get behind that. I just want to make sure that the property's going to move forward, like I said, and this isn't going to be wasted funding.
Oh, no, they're really working
You're going to raise
on-
enough on your own to complement
That's
this. Okay.
I mean, as we proceed now, but it's like any home, like Barb said, as we do repairs, we may find other things that need to be fixed.
Right, but
which
any
we have
home,
not been we have not budgeted for because you have no idea they're there.
Right, but the difference between this project and any home is that we homeowners
Oh.
are taking our own home. This is taxpayer money we're going
Right.
to.
Correct.
So-
No, I understand. That's why we try to be,
Right.
do our part is raise as many funds as we're able to supplement the stipend we get from the town.
All right, and you're not seeing any problems? You see this as a success
As of
path?
right now, honestly, no,
Okay.
no.
One
Right.
thing that might be helpful is, for you to know, is that we are beginning to work together, all three of the houses, to raise funds for all three of the houses. The Bike and Barbecue is going into, I believe, its third year. It has not made a great deal of money thus far, but it is growing, and it is, and all of these things, have to, go forward with baby steps. But we recognize the importance of presenting these as town-wide historic properties. We're very fortunate in that just by luck, we happen to have, 100-year histories. So we have the 1600s, how we lived and worked and played there at the Lee House.
Right.
Then we can move to the Samuel Smith, and then we move into the 19th century and the late 19th century at Smith Harris. There are ways that we can market all of these properties to support one another and to support the town, but we're just getting going on that.
Okay, cool. I got you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. No other questions?
Did you want to know anything about the archives, the archiving? If you don't, it's okay with me.
No, I don't think, I think the message is that the building is mechanically sound right now. You're fundraising, this will help you move along.
You got it.
And you don't see any skeletons in the closet. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next under new business is revenues. We would like to discuss revenues.
So you have the revenue budget in front of you, and you've been studying it, and you've made reference to it many times. But we're on April 9th. Appropriations is still meeting and plan to still meet until the 20th. And then the revenue side of, believe it or not, at the state level, the people who spend the money and the people who calculate the revenue don't work together. They don't even talk. So talking about dysfunction. So the appropriations is waiting for the revenue side to catch up so that they can make decisions. But this is the governor's budget. And we know about the governor's budget last year. It was significant cuts that didn't materialize. And then the governor came in and sliced them at the end. Not to the levels that he was proposing, but we still got sliced after the legislature finally voted in sometime in November, 5 months into their year. So this, while I won't want to be on record as saying this is the worst case scenario, I could tell you that it could get better. That the cuts being proposed from what we're operating in this is 17-18, to next year is about what's the kind of about 400,000? The difference between about 500,000 is the difference between, and on that third sheet of revenue, that short graph you have. Yeah, that one really tells a story. If you look at the governor's budget, that was eventually what this town ended up with, is $7.6 million. The legislature had approved on October 25th, 8.2, or almost $8.3 million. Governor came in and sliced. So from where we're operating today, where Mr. Newton and myself have made cuts in our current budget to handle it and such, from what we're operating under today, and if you look at what the first selectman's proposed revenue is, that is coming from the governor's budget, about $450,000. Again, that could change.
The
And-
proposed budget is your assumptions of what's going to come from the state.
Like we were last year, operating with picking numbers out of the sky. At least this year, the governor's budget wasn't so drastic. They're working off of it still. There haven't been other budgets proposed like there were last year. And don't forget, if they don't operate at all, there's a budget, there's already, there's a biannual budget. So what they voted on last year and what the cuts in the revenue that they decided upon last year would just take effect. They could come out of this session with no budget, with no changes to the budget already being proposed.
And for the projected revenues on here, which ones of these do you have the most influence over? These aren't all state. Some of these are town revenues, correct?
Well, yeah, of course, there's a lot of there's a lot of fees, there's a lot of, like the building department fees and such, dog licenses. I mean, there's fees and licenses up and down this thing. There are departments that collect money, and it's a really kind of an indication of where we are economy-wise and all the conveyance taxes, et cetera. So, is there something in here I could twist and tweak? I don't really think so.
I was just looking at all of them.
Yeah, no, that's,
And I guess what
Yeah.
I didn't understand, maybe you can talk about the fund balance. Is your expectation that you're going to take another 675 out of the fund balance this year, or is this just reflecting last year's?
that's pretty proposed. Is that correct?
That's what's
Yeah. We typically take money out of the fund balance every year.
How much is in the fund balance?
5.2 million.
And what percent is that of our budget? I didn't mean to jump on you. I just
Woefully
wanted.
low.
That's fine, that's fine.
What is it?
Woefully low.
What's the requested percentage that we asked to keep in? 7% of our,
Between 7 and 8.
and where are we? Below 7?
No, right about there.
Right at 7. Okay.
So we're contributing to the fund balance this year from some other sources? Or is this just taking away the excess above what we think the minimum is?
How did we come up with a fund balance, a number? Where did you come up with 675?
Just maintaining the prior year.
Maintaining the prior year, that's what we took out the prior year. Did we put anything in to the fund balance? What was left over in fiscal year 16, 17?
Right.
Does that get swept into the fund balance? Is that about what the number was, or do we have that? Much
Seemed like
less than that.
350,000 last year, kind of rings a bell.
So why does it say 675 then for last year?
That's what they took out, not what went in at the end of the year. I think the surplus was 300 and something, so that goes into the fund balance, but then 675 came out to balance the budget. So the net would be a minus 300 and change, if I had the numbers right.
Right. Thereabouts, using round numbers, yes.
If I have, and I don't, it's just old cobwebs that I don't have the math behind it. So the net out of the fund balance isn't necessarily 670, it's 670 minus whatever the surplus from this fiscal year is. And do we project any surplus this year?
Based on us getting the governor's mid-year cut and just running down to bare bones, probably not a lot. Probably less than last year.
So it's going to be a full 675.
It'd be very close to it.
And we think Moody's and/or Standards and Poor's isn't gonna think that we've gone too low.
They
It's
want
not
12
that-
to 15% they want double-digit percentages. There's not a lot of towns on our side of the state getting close to that. There's a lot of towns on the other side of the state.
So Anna, are you concerned with all the school renovation bonding that we're going to be looking at next year? That our bond rating is going to affect the price of our money?
Well, there's always a concern. When we go to market this year, our plan is to go.
Can we give Anna a mic, if you don't mind?
When we go to market this year, our plan is to go to Standard and Poor's instead of Moody's, because Standard and Poor's gives us, doesn't strictly rely on fund balance. They give some more equal weighting to all of our other demographics.
Do we have assurance that will work in our favor, or is to be? I don't mean this in a cavalier way, but are we just hoping that it will? Because this is a lot of money we're going after.
That's the reason that we're changing, because we feel that it will give us a better chance of maintaining what our current rating is, rather than continuing to go to Moody's.
If our rating drops one level, whatever that is, do you have an idea or an estimate back of a napkin what that would cost us in interest?
I do not.
So how many million are we talking about bonding next year?
We're not doing any permanent bonds. We're going to do short-term notes
Okay.
to start.
But it would still affect the interest on short-term notes, right?
It could, yes.
Yeah. I'm concerned about that because next year is where we're really going to be looking at
Yeah,
bonding.
I know, but I think the answer to this whole thing is in the revenue side, the spending. Anyway, I'm premature in that whole conversation, so I'll stop.
Can I piggyback on that comment with the 675?
Please.
Okay. Anna, last year we did have $675,000 set aside from the fund balance to sort of plug the hole in the budget.
Mm-hmm.
And year-to-date, we've spent 0 of those dollars. So do you anticipate not having to tap into that fund at all to close out this fiscal year?
Oh, I expect we will have to.
Do you have a figure?
Probably around 320,000 is what I'm projecting at this point.
Is that after emptying out the contingency funds that we have? You will still have to go 350,000 into fund balance?
That's part of my calculation.
So we'll have completely tapped out of contingency and go 350 into the 675.
What are you defining as contingency?
The operating contingency where you're asking for appropriations to fund different things and we pull it out, and then there's of course the salary contingency line.
Okay, so the salary contingency, we've used all of it. The regular contingency, as part of our budget hold, we have a hold on 96,000, but all of the budget holds are part of that equation because the reason for the budget holds is the decrease in the projected state revenues that we used in the original budget this year.
And last of all, it's fair to say that if you're going to tap in $350,000 into our fund balance, that there will be no excess revenues returned to the town. I mean, it's gone.
That would be correct.
Okay, thank you.
God, I wish I had an intelligent question to ask right now.
Another
Any
way to look at it is 650 is what we take, but we would have $300,000 left, which is
The-
what she calculated. So
Or we,
bottom line is the 350.
or we thought we were gonna have to take 600 and we had to take 300, which almost sounds like a success story, and it's all the times we're living in right now. It just hurts. All right. So, backing up a little bit. Any other questions on revenue? Aldi revenue, any questions? Jason? I'm sorry, I just tried to start from the end and walk all the way down.
That's fine, okay. Anna or Mark, probably Anna, I have a question about the tax item, the increase that is shown. Can you put that in sort of a time sequence, or it looks so favorable, but something's telling me.
Are you
that-
talking about the current taxes?
Yes, like that first item that appears. Is it because of the bump that we got in tax payments? Why does that number look so high?
That is what we project we're going to need to raise in taxes for the budget. So in other words, that's when we finally set the mill rate. Those are the taxes that we're going to need to raise.
Okay, so you're doing it, okay, all right, so you're looking prospectively.
So you
Okay.
have, you come up with the projected budget and you have all of your other revenues, and then the difference is
Right,
what you're going
right.
to need to raise in
But,
local
yeah,
taxes.
my point is, I just wanted to find where you were in time, so it's a prospective figure, okay. All right. Whereas everything else is, existing, so to speak. Okay, it's the one item that's unique on the list, okay.
Can I just share some information that would help with the 3.5 million also?
Okay, official support, but Ann Scott.
Yeah.
Okay, so that $3.5 million increase in that balance can be attributable to many different things. The only new business that has come into town, from my understanding, would be the dental orthodontic practice on Boston Post Road,
New tax revenue, you mean?
as well as the Dollar General store
Okay.
on Main Street.
Okay.
So well, actually, that would, I think, if you look on the assessed property values, they've increased by 16 million. So only a portion of that can be attributable to a new increased taxpayer base. The remaining of it will fall onto the existing taxpayer base. I don't know if that helps or hurts.
Did you have any other questions on the revenue?
Not right now. Yeah.
Can we have questions on revenue?
Yes. So I think, Mark, you alluded to the fact that the Appropriations Committee isn't meeting until April 20th.
No, they anticipate being hopefully finished. No, they've been meeting since January, but and meetings every day and hearings and testimony and all that. But they anticipate being able to release a budget, appropriations budget, April 20th.
So it's my understanding that they currently have a $200 million deficit that they're trying
In
to.
the current fiscal year, correct.
And you're saying that it is possible that if they don't come to an agreement, that the budget as currently proposed will just roll forward without any additional cuts?
I don't know how exactly the process works, and I don't ever want to know. It's a mess. There is something that if the appropriations just doesn't pass a budget or pass spending suggestions, they revert back to the budget that they passed last year. And frankly, I don't know if that is what the governor's budget is or not.
So then we can't say with certainty if there's a likelihood of the education cost sharing or the town aid road assistance
Or
grant
any of it.
or any of it being reduced
Nothing has
further.
been locked.
Yeah.
Nothing's been locked. It could be
So-
reduced further. They could come out and the governor could do the same thing again. It could cut another $1 million, which would be $2 million over 2 years.
Yeah.
That could happen. I've been assured that probably wouldn't happen this year. The deep cut that we took last year won't be duplicated. We'll get cuts. The budget reflects such, but I don't think it would be to the level it was last year.
Okay, that takes care of state grants. I'm still a little bit flummoxed by the whole severe reduction in the pilot funds. So do you have any information that you can share with us as to what the formula was used in that severe reduction? Why did East Lyme get so hard hit in the reduction of pilot funds?
Well, because we get a lot. Because we have 5 properties, right? You've looked at the town zoning maps. We have 5 major properties. The forest up top is not a major, but the National Guard on the river here, prime property. The prison, and that prison property goes all the way up to Society Road. It's a huge swath of land in the middle of our town. And of course, Rocky Neck State Park. Those are 3 substantial, and then Stone Ranch, and of course the forest. We get a lot. The formula was the formula is, I think we only get about 25% of what the formula is. Because whatever that formula is, they just keep on cutting. And there is an atmosphere up at the state that they were talking about eliminating pilot. I believe we're one of only 4 or 6 states in the entire country that even has a pilot program. That, if you have a state property in your town, well, you're doing your share to support the state. And it's just the way it is.
Yep. I just see that other towns didn't seem to be as severely cut as we were, so I was just wondering
I
if
don't have the particulars about that. I can get that for you. We'll call Senator Famik, and maybe key points in that formula we can draw out of him and send to you.
I'm trying to get a sense if part of that formula is based on a perception that we're a wealthy community. If we're perceived as a wealthy community and we can bear this burden, is that why we were cut so severely?
I don't think it has anything to do with wealth or tax base. ECS does. But I don't, and we get a lot of ECS comparable to other towns. I don't think so.
Okay. Moving on to this new revenue line item, municipal stabilization grant. New. Can you explain what that is?
I tried to once earlier. So they cut ECS. They came up with this new golden formula to cut ECS. But then they also had a provision, again, this is state legislature, and I wasn't there, I didn't witness it. But there was another statement that came out and said, well, no town should lose more than, I'm going to throw a number, 10% of their ECS. So they did the formula out, and all those towns that tipped over the threshold, whatever that percentage was, they made it back up in municipal stabilization grant. So it was just it was a process of let's have a new ECS formula and let's agree on it, but then let's not kill the small towns that are getting killed by this new formula. Let's back it up. We'll probably see that disappear over the.
Exactly my
Right.
point. How
Right.
long can we
Right.
anticipate having this in our budget?
Right.
1 year? Is it a phase-in over 5 years?
It really was a phase-in. It says, Senator Formica is a co-chair of appropriations, and that's what came out of what he was saying was we can't just make the cuts that we need to make. It needs to be over a 10-year period.
Mm-hmm.
Additions and subtractions. And some towns, as you know, the cities gained. Slowly, though. And so it is a way that this is probably where if they were going to take 10% a year or 20% a year over 5 years, that's where they would take it, rather than redo the formula again.
Gotcha, thank you. With regard to the tax relief for the elderly, a $92,000 cut, how does that affect our seniors in town? Will they be expected to absorb that entire shortfall, or is that allocated across the entire tax base?
Where is the here? There is. We have a senior program in town that we support, but then the state came in and did
It's about,
tax relief elderly. Is
Yeah,
that
about
the
10
renter's
lines.
rebate? Is that the renter's rebate? That's a different one.
So on this one, the elderly will still get the exemptions from the program, but we're just not, the town just will not get reimbursed by the state.
okay, so that is borne by all the taxpayers in the community, spread across, okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, we're absorbing about $100,000 of extra revenue cuts that the state put onto the towns that weren't there last year because they cut out the elderly program. Didn't cut the program, said the towns are going to pay for it instead of the state.
Right.
Rent
My
free.
last, and this isn't really revenue related, but it sort of is, do you have any update for us at all about the state's push to have municipalities pick up the teachers' pension costs?
There's been no talk about that this year. They're staying away from it. It is not I'm being told at CCM it is not dead. There's a committee, but it will not be brought up this year for sure.
Okay.
So that is a breath of good news from all the towns. There's other ways to go about fixing that, but so that isn't a dead. It's on life support.
Okay.
We won't see it this year.
That's all I have, thank you.
Lisa, any questions about revenue?
So the extra duty police, second from the bottom.
On the first page.
Yeah.
Yep.
So can you give me a little clarity on that, Anna? Why is that down so much and we're projecting to be negative 20 grand?
That has to do with the funds that we get for what we charge for the cars. Earlier this year, the Board of Selectmen approved an increase in the fee, number one, and number two, the funds are being deposited to the CNRE fund so that we can use that money to purchase future police vehicles. So that had an impact on what we take in the general fund.
So in the actuals for 17 were 95 grand, pretty much. That was put in the general fund as revenue. Last year, we projected 50 grand. What accounted for that difference?
The number of outside jobs that we have. So we don't know.
Because I thought we were charging, am I confusing this with, I thought these were the jobs that the police were charging for construction, right? They were going to get paid for that. So I was kind of expecting an increase in revenue.
we are increasing revenue, but it goes to CNRE now instead of the general budget.
So it comes into, is it their vehicle fund?
Yes.
And we're gonna take that money directly and pay cash for cars instead of going through the,
So we are
process we have.
we're allocating less funds to the vehicle acquisition fund then, because they have a different source.
Right,
Are we
we
in this
will-
budget allocating less funds?
We're allocating a portion, or we're, how are we doing it this year?
So, going forward, the police vehicles will be paid for with the funding that's in CNRE. For the first 2 to 3 years, we expect to still purchase the vehicles through the acquisition plan, but the funds that we take in from, for the vehicle use on